Our next guest on the Any Given Runday podcast recently came third in the Castleknock 5K and is a qualified nutritionist doing a master's in dietetics and is here to help you with all your nutrition needs heading towards the Dublin Marathon this year while she's also running it herself. Bri McGhee, welcome to this week's episode of the Any Given Runday podcast. How are you getting on?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Bri, how did you get involved with running? Because I'm guessing you didn't just show up to the Castleknock 5K, finish third, or was this something that's always been a part of you, or how did you get into sport?
Well, I kind of wish it was that easy, but I was actually
Hey,
very much a
we've been wishing it for
footballer.
years.
I know, and it might look like sometimes if you start posting online, you just kind of spawn one day and pull out a time or pull out a good run. But it actually very much started back playing football, Gaelic football. And I was with the Mayo. I'm a Mayo woman, a very proud Mayo woman. So it's been.
So you're having a good few weeks, Bri. Has that hindered your master's dissertations, the fact that Mayo won an All Ireland?
Oh yeah, I didn't know how to apply for maybe a sick cert for Mayo fever for the week that was in it. But I was like, but in fairness, no, played a lot of Gaelic football and growing up, and running was the kind of thing that was very much a punishment. Laps if you'd had a bad game or a bad lose or anything like that. And kind of from there, if you have any bit of fitness or any bit of running in you at all, if you found out you're playing football, the school cross country team always needed a fifth member, or always needed. So you'd be running through the hills with the football boots on. And that's kind of how it started, kind of in secondary school. And by was no means anyways decent, just was a number on the team, like the day out. And then joined my local athletics club, Castlebar. But again, would show up on, I was a fair weather supporter, would show up on the big days, but nothing really too outstanding. Enjoyed a few 800s and have a few Connacht medals and that. And then in my third year in college, in my undergrad, I couldn't go home every weekend to play football. I'd been playing with the county all the way up to kind of minor level, and I just couldn't go home and kind of commit that way. So I went down to Liffey Valley with my one pair of runners that I owned, and I was like, I'd love to break 20 minutes from my 5K and I need people to train with. And then kind of from there, you know yourself, it's safe to say I don't play football anymore, but that's where we are at the moment.
Was that a difficult transition? Because the camaraderie of the football and being around the girls, and especially the girls from home, girls you grew up with, and there is a huge pressure on people to travel home for training, or a perceived pressure to be part of the gang. And if you're not part of that gang, you're gone, you're shunned forever. Did it feel that way, or was it hard to let go and just focus on running?
To be honest, I guess I was quite naive originally at the start. I thought I could keep both going and wanted to run the national 5K in the Phoenix Park on the Saturday, but also that even hopping on the train home that I could tog out for a championship match the next day. And it was kind of, I'm the woman of the long goodbye. I probably should have cut it earlier, but it's always oh, well, tog out, you'll be good even as on the bench, we need numbers. And you kind of keep going and going until it gets to a point that you're I can't keep that up. And I think that was really hard. I think I really missed having the team element. But that also is a huge part, yourselves, if you run cross country or you're on a team of runners trying to maybe get a team medal at the national champs or whatever it is, it does still have that team element, although it looks a little bit different.
Running a sub 20-minute 5K. I actually don't know anything about that, Bri. So I'm going to change a little bit from the running just to see how did the nutrition kind of stuff come into it when you moved up here. Was you straight into a nutrition course?
Yeah, so I was the year of 2020 to do my leaving cert. So I know the trenches, as we said earlier. And it was really tough because I actually had dietetics down as my first course. And I remember that went well over kind of the 600 point mark. And I got my second course, which was to do nutrition in college. And I remember thinking, right, here we are, the long road. And started like that. Didn't actually love my undergrad. It was very much to kind of get through it. There wasn't actually a whole lot of passion around it until I started kind of taking that running side of things a little bit more seriously. And I don't know if you follow Davy Nutrition or Daniel Davy on Instagram. I reached out to him for my internship, and I remember I was over and back. He was probably who is this woman? And I ended up securing my placement with him in my final year and kind of refound that love for kind of the performance side of things. And that's where I started enjoying it. Maybe people who are doing Dublin, I had no idea anything about a marathon. If they were doing Dublin, they were like, could you give me a hand on the side? Da, da, da. And from there, I actually ended up working with him a little bit after. And it's all come full circle. And I applied to do my master's then in a more kind of clinical role within dietetics. So kind of that more hospital setting, a lot more of like tube feeding, a little bit different. But I like that I can still kind of do both, which is really nice.
When you go through courses like that, I'm always nervous when Sean says I'll be someone who has a good foundation in nutrition coming on, because I instantly remember all the bad things I've eaten, done, everything else. But when you take on a course like this, and obviously performance and sport was a huge part of your upbringing, and was it eye-opening to go into the science behind it, knowing what you'd done in your teenage years, and then to go just running with in Liffey Valley and getting some good 5K times? How satisfying is it, one, to realize what's actually involved in fueling sport, and two, do you follow your own advice, or are you like me and Sean that you still fall off the wagon no matter how many good athletes we bring on to this podcast?
Oh, listen, I think the thing about being a dietitian, the stigma that comes with it is it's so much do as I say and not as I do. And I don't know if we'll even get into it later on. Like, I think also being a female as well, you can have your own kind of struggles. And I often am quite open about that, having my own maybe struggles from like a nutrition point of view. And like, I haven't always gotten it right, like 100% haven't always gotten it right. And there's been times even more so from like looking at my cycle and people coming to me being like, oh, how do I get my cycle back? And then having to be like, wait, actually touch some grass here. Like, you don't have your own. And I remember going to my GP and I was quite upset about it at the time, being like, I'm helping these people maybe regain their cycle, but I can't pull it together myself. And he was so good and was like, listen, like, you're there to help people, not to be the gold standard. And just because like you know the science and you can understand why these things are happening, it doesn't mean that it has to be perfect for you. And sometimes taking that step back and working on maybe your own side of thing and maybe practicing what you preach a little bit. And I did. I had to take some time away, and that's even before I started making the page. I recovered from REDS, and that was a really tough thing. And anyone who's gone through REDS, it's like, it's not something you can just heal from pretty quickly. It's quite a long process. And kind of being able to put what I know now, the mistakes I've made, and then being able to kind of push forward to where I am today. So yeah, it's not something that's just because you know it that you can just apply it. Like you said, you could have all the best runners in the world on, but like, you're still going to fall into those maybe unhelpful behaviors or unhelpful habits.
Bri, people who are hearing REDS for the first time, we've had a couple of great nutritionists on over the years, and that's why we bring people on every year. Remind us what it is and how important it is to be aware about what it is.
Yeah, so REDS is relative energy deficiency in sport, and it can actually go quite unnoticed in many athletes. And that was actually the same for me. It kind of disguised itself a little bit as kind of some stomach issues. Didn't really know what was going on, and then things coming up fine in blood work, but not really knowing why you felt so flat. And I was in a really aggressive injury cycle over and over again, and didn't really know what was causing it. And it's that low energy availability. So obviously, not intentionally, was probably in that under fueling. Even though my weight was actually quite normal, but dare I say, like on the higher end of like the healthy BMI scale. And I remember thinking, well, I'm not underweight. Like, I don't really know why I would be suffering from this, but it's basically that your body is kind of unable to kind of perform these functions that you need in order to be able to perform at your best, and not even perform at your best, but in order to what you'd maybe categorize as someone who's healthy would be able to do. And it's a long comeback. Anyone who has gone through it, it's not an easy comeback. So it takes quite a lot of time, and it's quite a relapse kind of condition as well that you can fall back into really easily.
Bri, was it then, not to get too personal then, you said there you weren't too sure, like your weight was okay, even you said the higher end, only low energy, so your blood work was all right. Was it your cycle then that you knew that was the only giveaway then for you, that okay, this is something's going wrong here?
Yeah, I remember feeling quite low, like even mood wise. I remember I was in quite a bad injury cycle as well. I was kind of getting niggly, and then I'd get over one niggle and then something else would kind of flash up again, and then I'd be, would build up to 30 miles or 40 miles after taking some time off, and have to go right back down to 20 miles again, and it was such, and I didn't really know what was going on, because I was 20, I think I was like 21, 22 at the time, and I was like, God, you're really young to kind of have all of these kind of issues, especially around like my hips. And like, I just remember it was in the bin massively. And then I remember going, and all my blood work was like fine, maybe a little bit low in iron, which could be quite common amongst female athletes as well. And I remember being like, what is going on? My performance was terrible. I was going from hoping to be able to like break 18 minutes of my 5K to like fighting for my life to get to break 20, if even. And I remember being like, why have I gone backwards, even though my training volume's the same? And I think that if that's one thing that I do if I work with people, we kind of have a look and see where they're at currently at the moment to see, are there any signs that there might be any low energy availability, or there might be maybe undiagnosed, like maybe it might be REDS and it mightn't be as severe, but maybe something mightn't just be clicking for them and they're unaware.
Does it present the same with men? Because obviously a key indicator for you was the cycle obviously went away, it disappeared. And I think that's quite common with a lot of female athletes, that's a pardon the pun, it's the big red flag, as in it's probably the most prominent indicator for you that there's something not normal going on inside the body. Can it be a little bit more latent in men, and how, or is it similar signs, and how do the likes of myself and Sean look out for what, apart from we have to actually start running and training?
Yeah, and it's funny because it can present, it presents quite similarly. Obviously, men don't have that kind of cycle to be able to, maybe like you said, red flag that, maybe those symptoms. But also, I think it goes quite underdiagnosed in men as well, because kind of probably, what would be the word, like even a little bit more less willing to maybe to kind of show up with their symptoms, or to complain about it, or to maybe say, oh, I'm actually struggling with this. A lot of men would actually go maybe with low libido, and maybe a lower drive can sometimes be an indicator, as well with another kind of maybe low mood, or low appetite. There can be loads of different things that could play into REDS, because it's not just and that's why it goes quite undiagnosed, because criteria can be quite large and quite maybe grey, for a better kind of understanding of it, that it's not like this really strict criteria. Like your blood work and everything can be fine, but sometimes it's like a combination of these maybe not so positive like symptoms that might be your diagnostic criteria.
Are you struggling with gels? Training for Dublin Marathon? We've got just what you need. Ultra Fuel Speed Dust is a carbohydrate electrolyte powder that gives you 71 grams of carbs per serving, making sure that you're fueled and hydrated for the road ahead. We've helped thousands of runners say goodbye to gels and say hello to their next PB. Made in Ireland, by athletes, for athletes. You bring your best, we'll bring the fuel. Log on to ultrafuel.com now and use code AGR15 to get 15% off your next order. Terms and conditions apply.
If you're under fueling, and you're low mood and your training stuff's not going the same, you're still at the same volume, would weight loss not come into it, or is it the type of food, or is the nutrients in food that you're missing here? I'm unsure of how you wouldn't be dropping weight if you're constantly under fueling for these things and still putting yourself out there. I suppose unless you're still getting injured. But would it be a calorie in, calorie out kind of thing going on, or?
Yeah, and that's why even I've done a little bit of time in the NHS and weight management. So an awful lot of people, let's say from like a higher, those with maybe like a higher BMI, and we'd often say to them that, what the media, or what maybe you've been taught, is that it's very much like calories in, calories out, eat less, move more. That's the kind of thing when you look at weight loss, but it's not always quite like that. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the pyramid. It's like the pyramid of performance nutrition, I guess you could call it. And starting at that kind of base level is like your most important. So what we look at is making sure that you're eating enough. And then you kind of want to look at your macronutrients, which is your carbohydrates, fats and protein. And then look at your food quality, and then your timing. And then at the very top, you want to look at those like supplements, which is not, they're the things that, they're the 1%ers, the things that you kind of, if you're not doing all the other foundations right, like a supplement isn't going to carry you very far. And that's the kind of thing when you look at something like REDS or underfueling or any of these types of things, that it's like some of the maybe higher things might be a little bit more prioritized, but looking at those foundations. Are you eating enough? Are you having enough carbohydrates? Because they're metabolized quite differently. Because before you go for a run, you wouldn't see many eating a steak, let's say, because that's not going to provide you with that kind of quick release kind of energy that you'd need. We don't really look for our protein stores or our lean mass for our energy. That's not what we associate it with. We look for our carbohydrates, and then we can metabolize our fats. It's not quite as easily readily available as our carbohydrates, but you can use it at those like lower intensities. It can be oxidized at like or high or a low oxidation. That if it's basically if you're running at zone 2, which I know not much about. Unfortunately.
No, Bri, tell us what you know about zone 2. No, I do want to ask about, because I did a metabolic test with the VO2 fella, Sean Canan, and I was quite surprised that even in my I'm quite sedentary in terms of my work, that the aircraft will do most of the work. I'm injured at the minute, so I'm actually physically not able to do much, bar a little bit of weightlifting. And there's only so much of that you can do in a day. In my opinion, you can't go full Arnie on it and do 6 hours a day of weightlifting. That's a different career path. But when, like, I came out at about 2,150 in the current state, and that's with having pretty much a sedentary lifestyle. Is metabolic testing important for people? And I say that with the caveat, because most people are using the like of MyFitnessPal, or I don't know what the latest calorie tracking app is, and they get fascinated with the numbers. And I see now you can take a picture of your plate and it tells you what calories are on it. Is all of this important, or is it better for you to meet people at ground zero and go, okay, how do people guide what's good information, what's really their calorie outputs, inputs, and what foods they should be eating? Or do you just hate all these apps like us?
Obviously, this is where it gets really difficult, because I think context is so important. And that's why, like it's meeting people exactly where they're at. So let's say, for example, like I was working with a client today, and not from a performance kind of side of things, more so looking at a weight loss side of things. And we kind of gave a range of maybe what like energy intake would look like. And she was maybe asking, should I be using MyFitnessPal? And we had a conversation about it, and I said, is that realistically where you're at the moment? Like, is that going to be useful for you? Because that kind of rigidity isn't always useful, and people, like you said, can become quite hyperfixated or quite maybe hone in on maybe the not so important side of things. I think the apps are useful if you're in a good headspace to use them, but secondly, as guidance, but they're not a long-term kind of solution. What they can do is they can guide you to see, I don't know, I made actually a post recently enough. I was talking to Sean Tobin, and he said he's worked with nutritionists in the past, and he said that he does use the apps like Hexus and things, and he goes not to track his calories, but he just said his carbohydrate intake was a little bit lower, and he said that what he does, he uses it to track his carbohydrates. And just so he knows that he's eating enough of them, but he says that he's using them very much for a certain function. But so I'm not like, I don't want to bring down the apps or anything. They're not something I overly recommend. I don't think they're overly, the numbers are not, nutrition isn't an exact science when you look at things like that. And like you said, it all depends on context. And like you said, you're training, but like at the moment you're a little bit less active than you are maybe regularly, because you're not maybe running as much, but you live a sedentary lifestyle, but also you're male, and due to your age and due to your like loads of different things will play into your energy needs. So that's why I think that context is really important. So they can be useful if you need a little bit of guidance, but it's not something that I would feel, I probably wouldn't push people too far towards them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, mostly people will talk about these when they're looking to lose weight. And one of the most important things that maybe you'll touch on, and as we've heard many times, is when you take on a marathon block, and that's what people are here for, you shouldn't lose weight or lose a lot of weight. Otherwise, we could end up in scenarios we talked about, but not to scare people. But the best point, and I've actually never heard it as a tip, is fueling your races. Getting a guide for, well, actually, did I take in enough carbohydrates? It's something I've never heard of the apps being used in a I need to eat more sense than I need to lose. It's always the other side. It's always about body image or weight loss, as opposed to what does 800 grams of carbs across 2 days look like, when you're carb loading. Or I've done a test and it says I need to take on 1,000 calories and X needs to be, the macros need to be here to here for recovery. I've never actually heard of it being used like that. So if people are listening in and they're wondering what is underfueling, what is overfueling, where is a good base model for people to start as they're taking on marathon blocks, or with 10 weeks to go now to Dublin Marathon? Some people are over 20k already, as we've discovered.
And like, I think a good way to put that, and I don't know, is this just because it's the way that I work personally, it's that sometimes the pen and paper method of knowing that, and you'll often be able to find it, that on your easy days, let's say carbohydrates, for example, looking at 3 to 5 grams per kg, your body weight should be your guide for carbohydrates. The days that you're doing maybe your training runs, and like a session, maybe an hour easy run or whatever it might be, it's looking at maybe like 6 to 8 grams of carbs per kg body weight, and figuring what that is for you. If you're a 70 kg male, looking at what that range is for you. And then on those carb loading days, about 8 to 10 grams. But that's, like you said, it's all well and good saying that to someone, but what does that look like on your plate? And it's about getting quite good at reading your food labels and things, and having a look at the carbohydrate content. So knowing that a jam bagel probably has about 62 grams of carbs in it, knowing that a banana has about 27 to 30 grams of carbs, a glass of orange juice is about 30 grams of carbs, and being able to visualize maybe the foods that you maybe take in a lot, because you're going to get quite repetitive within your diet. It's looking at those foods that you take in quite a lot and having a read at the back of the packet and visualizing what that looks like, and seeing, can you hit your needs that way, and if there's a deficit, or if you maybe need to add in a little bit more, and how do you do that?
Bri, the back of the packet. The fewer ingredients, the healthier it is. And don't eat anything with ingredients you can't pronounce. Stuff I have heard for years, Bri. Years.
I know, and that is something I hear quite a lot. The whole concept of clean eating is quite a lot of people, even I work with, even very good runners, will come in saying, I want to go for the clean kind of fueling approach, which may not be overly helpful. And, you know, eating for performance and eating for health are two quite different things. And although they kind of follow the same maybe principles, it's about knowing when to use each one. So just because you can't, like an awful lot of additives and things like ascorbic acid would be things like, you know, your vitamin C and things. And even though you might think, oh, I can't be eating that because it's really terrible for you, it's actually just more so the name on the back of the packaging due to legislation or whatever it is. So if you go on that, all like the E numbers on the backs of things, if you look at EU like packaging, the E's and all those different things are what by law have to be put before preservatives, and all these different things are vitamins and minerals, and they all have like different kind of product codes, and that's why people have such a warped view of E numbers and you know, those kind of things. But no, I wouldn't say that. Or maltodextrin is basically a carbohydrate. It's kind of like an artificial made kind of carbohydrate, and it's what's in most gels and what's in quite a lot of like carb mixes. And what it is, it's loads of glucose molecules put together for fast absorbing carbohydrates. But people see maltodextrin and they're like, won't eat that, won't take that on, which is, it's really funny. So it's about maybe having an understanding. I wouldn't say that the less ingredients it has, the better. I don't know, have you seen the M&S? They went through a bit of a funny phase with like 5 ingredient foods, or like they had like cereal ranges, and it was on very like quite basic packaging and stuff. I don't know, have you seen it? Or it's like 3 ingredient cereal, but like if you look at a bag of cornflakes or something, it probably does only have about 3 or 4 maybe ingredients as well. But it's like, it's on this quite this what would you call it, more so like luxurious packaging, or that kind of element of that you're upscaling or buying something nice. And it's all a marketing strategy as well in that sense. So it's about being quite careful, knowing maybe what's maybe a marketing ploy, and also what's good or what's bad, or whatever way you want to
like
look at
when bread says protein bread and everything. It's clever marketing. I'm actually going to start selling protein honey next week. It's gonna be like a pre-race, post-race, during race fuel, and it has protein in it.
And
for
people
recovery.
will buy it, and it's so funny.
100%. I've just looked up the
Don't
labels
encourage
now. Backed by Bri Science Protein Honey. Bri, people are going to look at this, and some are going to feel relieved that, you know, I actually really like bagels, and I know there says a lot of things, and they last me 5 days, and that's okay. Good food, bad food. There's everything in moderation, and moderation as well, and that comes to running and also the fueling. But people are getting really worried about, and even myself, is the effects of all these gels that people want us to take, and so many grams per hour. And people are going to be looking at their long runs with the fear of gels, but also there's a real important training factor. How do we train ourselves to get from maybe someone has a bagel and a banana, goes for their run, but now they're going a little bit longer, and how do they understand what's actually required to get them through a race? And that day could be 5 or 6 hours long on their first marathon. Some people don't know how long that's going to be. How do people listening to this start to look at the next 10 weeks and go, okay, I'm going to do this, and I also need to factor in this, and how do they start with that pen and paper from now and go, this is how I'm going to figure out what suits me for my marathon?
Yeah, exactly. So, like, there's quite a lot of research done in behind this, and it's looking about your grams. You've probably heard, maybe if you guys have looked into it yourselves, that's kind of 60 to 90 grams is kind of what would be like recommended per hour doing a marathon. But I don't know if you watch online any of like the elites, and a lot of them will be kind of aiming for that 90 to 120 grams. So that's kind of like your 210 guys, like anything kind of up near the 230. Like maybe the real good guys. So we don't have to worry too much about that.
What about those 334 and 430 guys that I'm interested in?
So they're kind of looking for the 90 to 120 grams, and that takes quite a lot of work to kind of get up to that 120 grams. So like I said, we're not really focusing too much on that, but anything from like, let's say like your kind of 2.5 to 3 hours, we're looking at anything from like your 70 to 90 grams. So of carbohydrates. So what that might look like is, a lot of gels have maybe 20, 30, 40, depends kind of what you're using, and maybe looking at what that will look like for you on the day, whether it's gels, whether it's a carb mix you're using, choose whatever that is. Those people that are going to be out there for your 3.5, 4.5 hours, it's almost quite a different event to those who are running your 2 hours, because like it's still time on feet. So what that kind of looks like will be more so like your 60 to 90, your 90 grams. You're not going for that kind of higher 70, 90, 100 grams that maybe those people completing it in less time are going for. So what you want to do is be able to look at that. And like you said, you probably will get up in the morning and have your bagel before a run, but how do you start taking on this fuel? And was this person, I would tell people what to do, and then all of a sudden now I'm running Dublin, and I'm like, right, I should probably get after this and get on this. And being able, like, from someone who doesn't really never really had to take on fuel because I didn't do big mileage, was looking at what can I tolerate, and training the gut. It's like almost like training a muscle in the gym, and you're not basically training it to make it stronger. What you're doing is you're training it to be able to absorb better and be able to kind of take up your carb mix. So what I'm doing, I'm taking 75 grams personally an hour when I'm running. But I didn't start with that. What I started was that I started taking like 25 grams out on an easy run, and then I kind of brought it up to 50 grams, and I was like, this is doing quite well. And then I did my first kind of quite a long run. I did about 28k at the weekend, and I was like, right, we're ready to start kind of taking 75 grams per hour and seeing how that settles. And it's about building it up. You can't just go from nothing to everything. So on those 1 hour easy runs, 60 minutes, you might have 1 or 2 of those a week on your training plan. You might have 1 of those. Sometimes I wouldn't have fueled it previously, but I still start bringing the bottle out with 25, 50 grams of carbs. Depends where I am in my block, and trial them out.
If it's all running dependent on time and time on feet, what is the importance of fueling at pace?
Yes, I found this out the hard way, unfortunately.
I had a feeling when I saw it paste in capitals on your Instagram.
Oh God. And it's because it's really easy, like on your Sunday long runs, having a chat with the girls, taking down your bottles. Because for me personally, I'm using the Alter Speed Dust at the moment, and like it's quite easy to kind of take that quite leisurely. It's going down, and but I've started taking it on in my sessions. And when you're running at I did like 3 by 12 minutes there, just under 4 minute Ks, and I remember being like, God, I don't want to look at a bottle in the middle of a 12-minute rep. And I remember thinking, this is really, really hard. And I felt terrible the whole way around. So what I started doing was pulling back the drawing board massively, and again diluting that carb mix and taking on maybe a less concentrated form. And I've been building it into my reps as I go. And now I'm actually able to take it on at those kind of longer reps. I did 4 by 15 minutes and was able to kind of fuel accordingly the last day. Whereas like I couldn't fuel a 12-minute rep because it was terrible. It was everything was going wrong.
One, there's a couple of spin-offs to this, but I do want to talk about Speed Plus. They are currently sponsoring the podcast as well, and it is that adage of gel versus the Speed Dust and the carrying the water versus the gel in the pocket, and I think it's going to be the argument. But even when you look at Ironman or the serious endurance, there's always a carb mix of something on your bike as well as, because it's anything and everything. But when it comes to the marathon, and the bit I'm really interested in is the diluting and the concentrating. Is that personal? Obviously, very personal to people because nutrition is. And what is the starting kind of guidelines for people who maybe use our discount code? They get the Speed Dust. How do you use it? How is Bri using this stuff to fuel herself? And how do you plan to use it?
Yeah, so like everything, it's trial and error. And some people find a product that works for them from day one, and they build that up as they go. That's not always the case for people. And let's say like the Speed Dust, for example, a lot of I didn't know I was going to do the marathon until maybe about June time this year. And I wasn't going to do one. And I always said I never would because I don't have the stomach to do it. But I was using Speed Dust on a few Sunday long runs, and I was like, I'm actually tolerating it quite well. I'll see how we get on with using it. And I started off, so the recommended dose, if you look on the back of the packet, it's 3 scoops in 500 mils of water. And when I started off my initial long runs, whether it was, 80 minutes, 85 minutes, nice and easy, I used to hide the little bottles around the park and kind of pick it up and take that, and tolerated that quite well. Realistically, when you're running, like you said, at pace, having 3 kind of 500 mil bottle, I don't know where they're going to go. But like, I was like, okay, I really need to make a decision for myself now. How am I going to kind of condense that? And realistically, that's only 75 grams in one bottle. I can't bring 3 of those with me, and meeting someone on the course could be quite tricky. I'm speaking from the experience I don't have, but I'm just imagining like it's already stressful enough. I don't want to try to have to like meet someone with a bottle somewhere. So I started condensing it down into the 250 ml flasks. And what I did was, on an hour easy run, I put, instead of putting 75 grams of carbs into 500 mils of water, I did it into 250 mils. So basically half the liquid. And saw kind of how I tolerated that. And luckily it was quite well. But being able to build that in, and that's how you go with it, and seeing, is that something you can tolerate? Some people really dislike the liquid approach, and they said, I can't do that, I'll be going to the toilet the whole way, and it's all, like you said, Derek, like really, really individual for people. Some people love the gels, some people hate gels, some people love chews, people hate chewing stuff when they run. It's really, really individual to the person who's doing it.
Training for the Dublin Marathon? Then recovery should be part of your plan from day one.
We're all really good at getting the miles done, but not always so good at looking after ourselves afterwards.
That's why Ultra Pure Sports Recovery Kit is worth checking out. It's packed with 4 recovery essentials, plus a reflective band to help support your training journey.
There's a foot soak for a relaxing reset, Epsom salt leave-on gel for targeted post-workout recovery support, Arnica cream for bumps and bruises, which I now have many, and wintergreen heat rub for instant warming support before or after training.
So whether you're heading out for a long run or recovering from one, making recovery part of your routine can help keep you moving.
Head to ultrapurelabs.ie and check out the Ultra Pure Sports Recovery Kit. Train hard, recover smart, and get ready for Marathon Day.
For me, it makes total sense because I never pass a water station. And the reason being, I find with the gels, it's such a concentrate that you get that kind of that feeling in your mouth. So I always have to take with water. And sometimes water stations don't come where you necessarily need or want them. And that's why I always carry. I'm not one that throws my water bottle on the ground. I carry it. Even I don't know what kind of penalty I pay for carrying the bottle, but when I need it, it's always with me. And I suppose that's probably the benefit of having the 250 ml is you're getting a little bit of both. And I want to touch on the importance of hydration and how important is hydrating these long runs. And there's so many things we can talk about: electrolytes, salt tablets. Everybody's going to be sold everything at an expo, but in reality, hydration, how important is it, and how do people keep themselves balanced in their salts and water?
Mm-hmm. So the guidelines don't really change, actually, but it really depends on even your time. I know the fueling kind of side of things changes a little bit, your grams of carbs based on your time, but the guidelines don't really actually change as like however long it takes you to do your marathon compared to the elites and us not so elites. And like it's looking at maybe 300 to 600 mils of water, and it's like, yeah, but sometimes your gels don't fall, around the time, or you might have passed the water station and take your gel a kilometre up the road, and you're not going to carry it. But like looking at the logistics side of things, it's actually quite difficult to time these. And if that's something you want to go with, I often tell people have a look at where the water stations are. See, can you time your gels around that? Is that something that's possible? Can you meet someone with a bottle? Do you need that added stress? Probably not. But I don't know if you watch any like the elite marathons or anything like that. An awful lot of the elite guys, they have their water stations at every table, and a lot of them do have the liquid kind of carb approach, and the fluid intake is really important, and you do need that even with your gels. I know a lot of people don't, but the gels are really important as well to kind of keep that hydration and kind of within your marathon block as well. And that's why I find personally that having the speed dust, I'm kind of getting the best of both worlds. Within that, I don't really have to think about hydration as a separate kind of factor. It's all kind of doing the same thing.
Salt tablets, how dangerous can they be?
Again, context. Like,
if people are told, and I go again to marketing, because marketing is the reason we're all here talking about everything, but it's people are saying, well, I'm going to be sweating for a long time, so I'm going to take 2 salt tablets and I'm going to run around, because I know myself, I fell for that on one occasion and I really suffered, really suffered.
Yeah, and I think that comes into a massive point that anecdotes sell products and research backs performance. And that's the one thing that I can really say is that like I've said this quite often, that myself and Eric could make an electrolyte company in your back garden in the morning. It's pretty cheap to make. They're really cheap to make. And what a lot of them do is that they make these at a loss. So originally they make a really cheap product and they could send them out for free to all the influencers and things like. And I'm not blaming those people who promote them, because if someone's sending you a free product, do what you wish with it, or if it's something you believe might work for you because it worked for someone else or whatever, that's up to them. And they're really these people are really good at their jobs. They're really good at marketing. And if you see someone has taken these and you want those 1%ers, you're like, of course I'm going to engage in those kind of consumer practices as well. And I think that you can put a really nice packaging on these things. Electrolytes are not, they're essential, because if I'm looking at a patient within the NHS or from a clinical side of things, we always look at their U's and E's and have a look to see, but that's more so to look at their kidneys to see if they're failing, or to see like loads of different things. We're not suffering from that. Your diet alone will have enough sodium. The one thing people are scared about is sodium. You're getting enough sodium in your diet. We're actually, most people in the UK and Ireland are probably getting double the amount of sodium within their diet. You're not, those things like diurolite and things were actually made originally for people with extreme nausea and vomiting, for like, you might have been days without maybe taking on things, or maybe excreting. Your hydration status could be affected because of those things. If you're out for a marathon or a bad hangover, exactly, and they work wonders.
That's what we really use them for.
Exactly. And like
language.
Exactly, and like that's what they're there for, those cases of kind of extreme dehydration. Realistically, you're not going to be that dehydrated. Maybe if you're doing maybe an ultra event, if you're a really salty sweater, most people might think they're a salty sweater. If you actually look down at it, they're fine. Not something I would engage in. I never tell people to stop taking them. I just would be like, mind your money, like in the nicest way possible. Like, yeah.
Anyway, there goes me electrolyte company.
I
But
know,
the honey
that's
though
terrible. Yeah, everyone's going to hate me. I was like, God, no one's going to want to work with me.
Bri, we're talking about stuff that's 9-10 weeks away. Going into fueling day to day, there's a lot of things that so far in the podcast I cannot relate to you on. I cannot relate on doing an 18-minute 5K. I cannot relate on 600 odd points in the leaving cert. But what I can relate on you on is the daily bowl of cereal. Having digestives for the run. Talk to me about this, and as well as that, the food biscuits. You thought dietitian biscuits. Oh, Lee, that's what's on the podcast. I could
work with Bri any day. Bri, biscuits.
And snacking, particularly snacking throughout the day as well, because I would hear before the 3 meals a day, but like Eric's all clear in the biscuits. He wants me to shut up, so I will.
Yeah, so an awful lot of dietary recommendations are actually made on like the general population. So you're looking at the population as a whole. So like those in their like 90s, those who live a sedentary lifestyle, those who don't run, you're looking at a really, really big picture. And what they do is they try kind of find those like happy kind of mediums, I guess, what you could say, that they would kind of cover everything. Anyone who's running a marathon or anyone who kind of runs even recreationally, don't overly fall into that category. And it's, people think of those 3 square meals a day. Like, how often have you been told, your 3 square meals a day? And that's perfect. If you're training for a marathon, and I know we're talking a little bit more so specifically towards the marathon, it's like looking at optimizing your nutrition at any given point. I put up a poll the last era post being like, have I ever influenced you to do anything? And I'd say I had like 40 responses being like the bedtime cereal. And I was like, okay, if I die now, like I've done my work. Like
This bedtime cereal. I haven't heard of this now.
honestly, it's a great job. It really does the trick. And what it is that looking at a bowl of cereal, so looking at your overall carbohydrate intake for the day, and your overall nutritional status, and looking at maybe a bowl of cereal and being quite demonized potentially by like diet culture and cereals are really fine sugar and whatever it is that you might have heard previously. I think cereal is actually the marathoner's best friend. So like, let's say for example, going to bed, you could have maybe 40 to 60 grams of carbs just in a normal bowl of cornflakes or whatever cereal you actually enjoy yourself. Looking at, if you're using a milk in a bowl of cereal, I'm trying to think of like what people would usually use as a portion. You're probably getting anywhere from like 10 to 14 grams. Yeah, like 10 to 14 grams of protein within your milk, within that portion.
I'm just here of how many bowls of cereal I need between now and bedtime.
No, honestly, it's a great, really, really good. And then looking at your calcium intake as well, saying, okay, within that, you probably are getting 200, 400 milligrams of calcium, whatever it is, based on your portion. And what that does, it's a really good way to bridge that gap. Before a session, I know that like a bowl of porridge, I like a bowl of porridge, but I know that the fiber and everything in that does not sit very well with me moving at that might be higher intensity. A bowl of crunchy nut cornflakes is perfect. Like I have multiple bowls of like boxes of cereal. I have a selection. And it's a really, really good way at optimizing your nutrition.
I am telling you this right now, that clip is going to be clipped on Instagram. And the reason being, there's times I come home at 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I wish I could say it's for all the reasons you said, the calcium and everything else that goes with it. It's pure laziness on my end. I'll be home at 9:30, 10. I know I'm up at 5:15 in the morning, so I will grab a bowl of cereal, and the better half will look at me. She's like, will you eat something that's better for you than a bowl of cereal? But now, I'm not going to tell her this right now because
the dietitian says it.
Later on.
Don't ask Sean what portion he eats. A bucket of cereal. Did you ever see a horse being fed on a bag? That's like what happens, Sean, with cereal.
A bit of sugar on top. I'm getting my milk and protein in there. I don't see a problem with this.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of what we speak about quite a lot, is that instead of seeing food for like moral values, because it doesn't have moral values, whether it's good or bad, it's like looking at it for what exactly it does. So we mentioned digestives, and I don't see digestives as biscuits anymore. I don't know, as the dietitian, I see it. I know that in 3 digestives, there's probably about 30 to 35 grams of carbohydrates, probably a few grams of fiber in there as well. And like the regular ones, I'm loving out chocolate digestive. And a cup of tea. And like, I don't.
Dip them in by the 10, Bri.
Oh, honestly.
That's probably where I go wrong. That's probably where I go wrong. Too much energy.
But when you start seeing food exactly for what it's worth and what it actually does, that's kind of where your marathon training will kind of take a little bit of a pivot. And instead of seeing things as good and bad and morally, doing something better or worse than the other, it's like looking at it for what it is exactly. And the daily bowl of cereal, if I could tell you to do 2 things, it would be your daily bowl of cereal and also supplementing vitamin D as well. I can't get away without saying that.
We peaked. I saw one of your posts, you talked about obviously your carb and your high carbs and stuff for training days, but then on a non-training or a rest day, you talked about higher fiber and lower carbs. Why?
And it's not so much looking at like your lower carbs. So what you're having a look at is on your those training days, like those are your kind of, you want your carbohydrate stores, you want your glycogen stores, is how we store our carbohydrates, to be nice and topped up. So they're the things that are going to be fueling your session. So what I would be saying is having quite a key focus on your carbohydrates, and those lower fiber foods, because obviously the fiber is great and we still want to focus on our fiber intake for general health more so, but looking at maybe like things like your white bread, your Rice Krispies, those kind of things are a little bit kind of have less fiber in them, so there'll be less kind of pressure on that GI system or on your gut. The days that you're not training at a higher intensity or not long running and those kind of things, as the days that you kind of want to maybe have a look at maybe using those like maybe your brown breads, like those kind of more like fibrous foods, because fiber is really, really important within our diet. But sometimes it can be actually quite hard to make that balance when you're in a higher kind of high energy demands or in the middle of a training block. So what it is about periodizing your fiber around your training as well. So you don't want to be eating, maybe, I know personally a bowl of porridge doesn't work for me the morning of a race or the morning of even a session or a long run, because those kind of like slow releasing carbohydrates, although they're great, they can be really, really tough on the stomach as well, and kind of help with that gut motility, which is something that I don't really want to engage with for my session. But yeah, it's about being able to have a look, focusing on your carbohydrate needs for those kind of high energy and high demanding days. But then on the days that you're maybe jogging, the days that you're off, the days that you're not running, having a look at maybe filling up your plate with a little bit more of those kind of fruits and veg, and maybe the focus isn't so much on the carbohydrate intake, it's looking what else you can add into your diet as well.
Training the gut, Bri, and morning routine and toilet routine, is that something that can be trained with the right nutrition and stuff? And then I want to touch a little bit on caffeine and how that can help or hinder somebody's day for all of the same reasons.
Yeah, so the one thing I get from a lot of people is, I can't eat in the morning, or, oh, I run at 6 o'clock before work, I'm not getting up at 4 to have a breakfast, which is so understandable. Like I completely get that. And it's about looking at things that will work for you. So knowing that, looking at your carbohydrates, like we said, a glass of orange juice has about 30 grams of carbs in it. You know, the little mini orange juice cartons you can get in Aldi, or they'll be your best friend within a marathon block. And they're really ideal after a training session or something like that, to be able to sip on in the car on the way home, being able to sip on them at your desk in work if you're going for a session later on. And what it is, it's that they're really easy load on that kind of GI and really easy on your gut, but they're pretty readily available carbs. So what I'd say to someone is, maybe don't be getting up and running fasted, but seeing what you can tolerate that morning, whether it's a sports drink, so having a thing like Speed Dust and being able to make up a bottle and sip on that, and something is better than nothing, because that's the energy realistically that you'll be using in order to fuel that run. And some people I know, like my boyfriend, he's a very good, he actually paced the lead women in the leads, like lead women in Dublin last year. He's a very good runner. He's within Dublin Track Club himself, and we'd often have to get up at a crazy o'clock to run, and he would, more so than me, but he would often have to get up. He gets up and runs, but he's often been maybe a spoon of honey or something like that on those kind of, if he has 5 miles or something. Yeah, this is honestly,
This is it.
yeah, you're going to have to get royalties on it now. I'm fueling the fire massively. But
And how important is that window after? Because a lot of people say, and it's one thing, I'm like, okay, I've finished up the run in the Phoenix Park, I just want to go home, I need to have a shower. And then an hour has passed and I'm on the couch and I'm not arsed getting back up and going back into the kitchen. How important is fueling directly after the session?
Yeah, so I don't know, you've probably heard or come across a thing like the anabolic window, that kind of static 30-minute window. It's the research actually more so now is that thing isn't what we really should be focusing on. It's actually looking at your carbohydrate and your protein intake throughout the day, like kind of spread across the day.
No big panic
yeah,
anymore.
It's not this big panic, and people cancelling plans because they have to get home and eat, or they have. But what I would say is think quite realistically and quite smart about it as well. So, like I mentioned, those little orange juice cartons, or the little like protein yogurts, if you enjoy those kind of things, just being able to have Flavins flapjacks. I go through a box of them a week. I go through so many things like that, and like being able to have like your go-tos after, things like your chocolate milk, having something readily available there to kind of, and that will aid your recovery. But it's just because you don't hit it doesn't mean you're never going to recover from this run. It's not this crazy static window. It's like maybe having something to bridge that gap between getting home and maybe getting a shower and then being able to kind of get that meal in after. But it's not this crazy static window that we've been maybe tormented a little bit with.
And I do want to come back just to the caffeine point, and because I thought it was important to finish that one and come back to this, because again, marketing will get the better and first time marketers, and you yourself, caffeine in your training, in your race plan, what's the science behind it first of all, and how do you plan to use it?
Yeah, so caffeine doesn't give you energy. People have a funny kind of misconception about caffeine. What it does, it's actually a stimulant, and it kind of, what would I say? It's about your perceived effort, and maybe your perceived effort doesn't feel, you might feel like you're working quite as much, and it kind of delays that kind of feeling of fatigue. So it can be really, really useful. So let's say someone who's running like a 3-hour marathon, I think, or 3.5-hour marathon, for example, I think there can be anywhere between like 7 to 14% benefit, like within a 3-hour marathon that can help take off your time. So caffeine is really, really useful. The only thing about caffeine is that it can cause issues for some people because, like I said, it's a stimulant. So it can, for a lot of people, can upset their gut. So it's something you have to train within your marathon block as well. Also, caffeine doesn't act straight away. It's not like you have caffeine and then all of a sudden it works. It kind of starts to kick in and starts having an effect 45 to 60 minutes after you take it. So I've often seen people on a race start line of a 5K taking a caffeine gel, and it's like, oh no, like this is going
No
Fire on the way home.
yeah, I was like, oh well, I hope you've run well, but I'm sure you'll have a fantastic afternoon. But like it's it is just about knowing the science. And like, of course, if you see many people take them, I think it's a really, really good performance enhancer. And there's loads and loads of research behind caffeine. And that's why something I would recommend. Personally, myself, I'm trialing to take a little bit of caffeine within, like a tablet within the marathon. I'm only starting it this week because I still have 10 weeks 10 weeks till Dublin. So I'm now kind of trialing those fueling practices. I'm able to tolerate my carbs now and then seeing what else I can layer onto that as well. But it's something you do kind of have to build up. Don't try anything new on race days.
Just on the caffeine.
We try everything.
Well, this is true. But except caffeine, though. And that's what I want to get to. Because what if your tolerance is pretty much, you have 1 cup in the morning, then you have 2 or 3 or 4, potentially 5. I stop around 12 o'clock. But what if you're used to having a lot of caffeine? Will that negate the effects that on marathon day? And should you wean off for a couple of weeks and then back on? Or what would you recommend?
Yeah, so it's more so looking again at context. So caffeine sensitivity, the more that you have it, obviously the sensitivity is a little bit kind of reduced as well. I'm not saying that if you are used to having 3 cups of coffee before lunchtime a day that it's going to have no effect. But what I'm saying to you is that you mightn't have the same effect as someone who doesn't really have too much caffeine, and they might be able to kind of feel that perceived effort a little bit differently. But it is something that I would definitely include within your marathon if it's something that you want to take on. This is what we look at, and it's like sometimes I have to touch a bit of grass myself and realize I'm not going to the Olympics, and it's like I'm actually doing this because I enjoy it. And like, if the caffeine's really going to upset my stomach, do I really care about taking it halfway through? You know what I mean? That I'd probably more so focus on that kind of carbohydrate intake. If I can take and handle and manage the caffeine, fantastic. If not, I'm not going to lose too much sleep about it, because I'm presuming most people that listen to the podcast, guys, we're not going for, Olympic standards here. We're doing this because we want to maybe prove something to ourselves, or we want to, do something that we enjoy or do hard things. These 1%ers aren't going to, make or break your marathon day. And if it's something that you can't handle, but you're taking it because you think you must take it, just maybe pull back to the drawing board a little bit. But no, it is a performance enhancer. And there's the only things I really look at as the research that really backs things is beta alanine. If people, again, context, I don't recommend it to everyone. People, if they ask me about it, I'll tell them the science behind it and let them make their own judgment. And I think that's a massive thing with nutrition. It's all your own judgment. That you can have the science here. I will tell you what the science is. I'll tell you the benefits, but I'll also be like, but you're an adult and you can make these decisions for yourself, whether or not you want to include these within your marathon block, or if you want, just like if you want to take gels or liquids during your marathon, it's all personal, whatever you're willing and wanting to take on.
Most runners don't have a training problem, they have a guessing problem.
If you've never had your VO2 max or metabolism measured, there's a good chance you're training at the wrong intensity, missing valuable adaptations, or getting your race nutrition wrong.
Or running it all, Eric. Health Matters replaces guesswork with data. With over 15 years of experience and more than 25,000 performance tests completed, they're one of Europe's most experienced performance testing providers.
In a single test, you'll discover your true VO2 max, peak heart rate, your 5 personalised training zones, your aerobic and anaerobic thresholds, and your carbohydrate requirements for training and racing.
Your results are available immediately and are explained in full on the day, so you'll leave knowing exactly how to train, how to pace, how to fuel for your next event.
Health Matters are based in Dublin, welcoming clients from across Ireland every week. They also provide on-site testing for running clubs, corporate wellbeing programs and groups nationwide. You can find out more or book your test at myhealthmatters.ie, because your health matters, so train with data so you can race with confidence.
Beta alanine, is that something that affects ATP in cells that kind of gives people that, or am I wrong in saying it's something to do with kind of reps as opposed to, I'm not sure what it brings to the marathon, but it's definitely a good training tool. And also I want, now that we've gone this road, people who might think creatine is for bodybuilders, how important would the two of these be?
Yeah, so it's actually, like I said, so caffeine, creatine, beta-alanine and beet reduce are the things that actually, if you look at the Australian Institute of Sport, that's the things that actually, that a lot of the research backs are these things. And that's not what I'm saying, that everyone who comes to me, I'm like, you need to start on the beetroot shots. This is going to get you, like, that's not, we kind of look at the foundations first and look at that kind of pyramid that we were talking about earlier on. It's building those foundations. But like you said, beta-alanine is, basically, it's like a lactate buffer. So looking at that perceived, that horrible, horrendous, if you've raced a 5K, you probably understand the burn. Yeah, horrendous. So that really horrible feeling, so bad. And every time I run one, I'm just like, this is terrible. And that kind of horrible sensation, that burning sensation, that beta-alanine basically acts as like a lactic buffer. And you're going to have to be taking it like anything, like consistently, in order to kind of delay that sensation, or that perceived kind of burning effort or perceived effort. So yeah, I'd say it'd be quite useful. Again, personally, I don't take it, not because there's anything wrong with it, just because like I'm not going to the Olympics. And like I'm doing this because I enjoy it. Things like creatine, again, loads of research behind creatine. 3 to 5 grams is what people should be looking for a day. Again, if it's something that you want to, I probably should start taking it. I only take vitamin D, which is, I feel like, is a good stretch for me. But but creatine it's really, I think what you're mentioning there, Eric, was about ATP is kind of the energy that we use, which is adenosine triphosphate. It was basically the energy molecule that we use. And what happens is creatine is stored as a phosphocreatine. And when we use ATP, we use it pretty quickly. So what creatine does, it's almost like that your ATP is like your phone and the creatine is like your power bank. So what it does is it kind of stores within and is able to donate that phosphate to kind of make readily available ATP, which is basically energy. So I think creatine is really useful. There's loads and loads of science and research behind that as well. Creatine cycling and creatine maxing, I don't know if you've heard much in the media about that. A lot of people looking at 20 grams for a cognitive...
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
So again, it's like looking back and drawing back and looking at what's important to you and being able to make those. People are like, should I be taking it? I'm like, well, there's research. There's research there. But I'm sure if you were to research anything, I could find that, there's flat earthers around as well. Like there's enough research to kind of prove anything. And it's looking about what's important to you and what you believe and what, I can give you the science, show you what, most literature supports. And then it's like from there, you have to be able to make your own decisions based on that as well.
So I'm going to have a hot honey with added creatine, beta-alanine, all these kind of things. This is going to be amazing.
I
Yeah.
want to get on that, Eric, actually, because one of the things I saw you put in, Bri, I'm a big fan of post-race having the chocolate milk. I love the chocolate milk. I'll have a pre, post, and during. It's not too good for me when I do pre and during, but I do, and I'll pay the price. But I don't know why I waffled that. Bri, you had on one of your posts that one of the things that had was hot chocolate.
Yeah. Really, really good. And again, looking at that, we spoke about biscuits earlier on,
Yeah,
and the bowl of
biscuits and
cereal.
hot chocolate. If I have that in the evening, she's going to look at me and think I fell off the wagon. Being like dipping the biscuit into the hot chocolate, being like, oh, I guess you're not doing the marathon anymore. And I'm like, no. This is actually great for me.
Yeah, my dietitian told me to.
Absolutely.
But no, it's again looking at the context of it. So what most people do is that they probably would drink hot chocolate. I don't know, those people who drink it with water scare me a little bit. But I like, if you are having a hot chocolate and drinking it with milk, let's say, you're still getting the portion of milk, or the serving of milk. So what I'm quite a big believer of, the Avamore protein milk. They just have a little bit more protein in them. I just find it so much so that, not that I struggle massively to get my protein in, but something if I find like I'm lacking a little bit at the end of the day, I don't track or anything, but I feel like, I could probably do with a little bit more. I've had a harder set, whatever it is. I'll often have a hot chocolate in the evening, or if I go out for a coffee with friends and I don't want that second coffee, having a hot chocolate. And you're probably getting anywhere from that kind of 10 to 15 grams if you're using the things like your Avamore protein milk of protein. You're getting your carbohydrates from your hot chocolate. You're looking at the calcium from your milk as well. Milk is fortified with loads of different vitamins and minerals as well. And seeing it as, this is actually quite nutritious. You know what I mean? Instead of having your cup of tea in the evening, we'd often have, myself and Gavin could have a hot chocolate in the evening or something like that. And they taste great. And it's, again, all contributing to that overall nutritional picture, and not putting these moral values of good and bad. They're actually a pretty good recovery tool.
Bri, we're coming up on the hour. I want to bring you all the way back to when you kind of started down this nutrition role. You went in with daily nutrition and everything else. Was there, if you look back at your perception back then of nutrition and more so performance and marathon and stuff like that, just because the podcasts are on, was there an eye-opening moment or something you went, oh, I actually didn't know that about nutrition, or that's what I didn't think about, didn't look at it that way until you start going down that road? And if there's nothing there that pops out, is there something online that you keep seeing now that you're like, why do people keep falling for this nutrition thing?
Yeah, I'd actually say that it's the whole side of marketing. It's really tough watch at times, and I think that we've kind of got lost a little bit along the way. And this is a massive eye opener: is that somewhere along the peptides and all these different things, electrolytes, whatever it is that you're buying into, we kind of got a little bit maybe lost, or our message got slightly lost along the way, that, we want to be healthy and, we eat well and whatever it is, and fuel well so we don't get injured, so we can live long and healthy lives, so we can do the things we want to do with our family or whatever, and our friends and our partner, whatever it is that you want to do. And that somewhere along the line, we kind of got that message a little bit lost, and we've become so hyper fixated on the supplements and the routines and all these different things that we've actually are making us potentially a little bit miserable, and maybe taking money out of our pocket. That why we started it in the the first way. Why did we want to run a marathon? To prove hard things, or or to train for something or commit to something. Why all of a sudden am I so stressed out about my grams of this and buying this, and how expensive X is and Y is, and good and bad and clean eating and da da da. Sometimes it's like, touch a bit of grass, pull it back. Why are we doing these things? And that would be a massive thing. I know it's not overly scientific and not exactly that exciting, but that would be the main thing.
That, Bri, the absolute best luck for you coming up in Dublin Marathon. There's a small chance I might see the starting line. There's no chance I'll see the finish line.
I don't know.
I'm giving out 3 shots of honey during the Bri. You'll see me. You'll see the marketing that's going to happen with this stuff.
Yeah, I'll be right on to it. I can't wait to buy the product when it hits the market.
Thanks so much for giving us your time and so many tips and tricks. I've no doubt there's going to be so many more questions and people who will come hunting more information. For those who are looking to find out more, where can they find you?
So my Instagram is just On the Run with Bri. A lot of people get quite confused. This is not my full-time job, by the way. So people think that I'm basically, I do work, and I, unfortunately, I still have to work. And I am doing my master's, and between like training things, that it is very much like a side kind of, more so like a side hustle or a passion project. So, feel free to message me over anything. And sometimes people can be quite concerned about a supplement, or, they're going through it nutritionally, or they want a little bit of help, or they just have a question, or they want to let me know how they're doing. Like I told you before, my inbox is full of bizarre things. Genuinely feel free to pop out. I can message you at crazy times at night, because by the time I get around to opening my inbox, it could be any hour. But always feel free to pop something in the DM box, and I will get back to you at some point.
You have just opened the floodgates there, Bri.
I know.
Thank you.
Bring it back. Edit it out. Except for the
Thank you very much for listening to this week's episode of the Any Given Run Day podcast. From myself, Bri, and Eric. Take care. What? No honey reference, Eric? No?
I can't keep up with the order, Sean. I have to stop advertising. Protein honey.